Hi, everyone. This is Kumar Danatran with Agile Meridian, and this is our 38th episode of the Agile Shorts.
Wow, that's a bunch of Agile Shorts.
That is a lot of Agile Shorts. Yeah. You have lots to pick from, 38 of them. So today we're going to be talking about team size. What is the ideal team size? And, for me, it's not really an Agile thing or it's a thing. Small teams to me are more efficient, more productive. And in my experience helping our clients, the teams seem to just grow and grow and grow. And, we've got teams of 15, 18, 20 people, and they're trying to be agile. They're trying to be nimble. They're trying to deliver, and it's just not working. So I'll turn it to my colleagues, Jolly and Chris, and we can talk about this maybe a little bit. What do you think, Jolly, in terms of small teams versus large teams?
Yeah, one of the big things, whether you are in the office or remote, is that the more the number of people, like we have realized, Kumar. I mean, you and I started off this Agile Meridian. It was just you and me, and now we have more people, and it takes more effort to communicate with each other and to make sure that we can collaborate with each other. Not all time work for everybody. We have to have all four people on a call to make sure that all the decisions, at least everyone knows about it. Otherwise, someone might miss out. So the more the number of people in our current pandemic-driven world, the more difficult it is to communicate and collaborate with each other. And there's a crazy math. I'm sure one of you guys know how that formula works, but every time it goes about, I think the magic number is maybe 5 to 6. After that, the number of communication paths you need just to make sure that everyone is informed, skyrockets, right? It's an exponential rise almost. When it crosses 10, it's unbelievable how many number of communication paths there are. So smaller teams I have seen, there was a Harvard business study which came out, a review study, HBR review, which said 4 to 6 was the ideal one, even though Scrum used to say less than 10 now. Mm-hmm. They said 4 to 6, which sounds about right. And maybe that didn't include a Scrum Master and a product owner. But still, 4 to 6 is maybe 2 to 3 devs and 2 to 3 QA people, right? That kind of makes sense. And logically, that sounds like the right number. I have worked with only one team in that size, and I can guarantee you that was a great experience for them and for me as a coach who was working with them to kind of help them through that path of continuous improvement. Mm-hmm. Chris, I don't know whether you have similar experience with that.
Yeah, I do. It's, you think about large teams and you think about how do you pivot, right? I mean, if you've got to change directions and you've got 15 people on a team and, hey, we're now going to go do this, you've got to get everybody on board. And there's a lot more. You mentioned that formula, right? That communications formula. When you think about it, you go from, when you go from 3 people, right, where you're talking about a total of 6 communication paths to 9 people, that's 72. I mean, that's huge, right? I mean, it's just huge. It's more than it's exponential almost. And it causes problems for teams. And my experience is the smaller the team, the better they do. And the easier they are to pivot, the quicker they get up to speed, the more they become like a family.
Yeah.
Yeah, the formula. I think that's the formula. I stuck it down there in the messages. It's N being the number of people on the team times the number of people on a team minus 1. That's the number of communication paths. And so you can see this is an exponential formula, right? If you have 6 people, that means you have 36, 35 communication paths. Still doable. But what happens when you have 15? Right? That's an exponential number of communication paths because there's so many more people that you have to sort of keep together and keep aligned. And that's what we're seeing with our clients. And the ceremonies, the Agile ceremonies, the stand-ups, the plannings, the demo, the retro, and all that, it starts to break down when you have large teams, because not everyone can go. The stand-ups become, imagine standing up for an hour, right? Because your team's so large.
Yep.
And you do that every day. No wonder people are like, oh, Agile doesn't work. Teams are so big. It just doesn't scale.
Yeah.
One of the other things I think is a benefit is with small teams is that when you have a small team, they can mature faster because they learn faster. Again, the communication paths being limited to that team, a small team, 4 to 6 people, they're going to learn quickly. They're going to become mature a lot faster than if it was a large team, right? So small teams, we think that they fail faster, they learn from those mistakes, they mature faster. Chris, seen this?
Do they really fail faster, or is it they recognize it that they're failing faster? Right? I mean, we talked about this before we jumped on here, and I don't know. What do you guys think? Is it they fail faster, or that we recognize it?
Yeah, the reason is what we mentioned before. Because of the number of communication paths, the feedback is faster, right? And when the feedback gets faster, it leads to what you said, Chris, which is you recognize and agree, and the team comes to an agreement on what really happened. And decisions to pivot or to continue becomes easier to make because of the faster feedback loop.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's the recognition of it, too. Yeah, for sure. And with a small team, they're definitely more nimble, right? Because of that. Another thing I feel is that small teams, they're just more transparent, right? Just from this because they're small and because they're able to pivot and move faster. What happened? Where did my people go? Are you all still there? There you are. You all disappeared from my screen. I don't know if that happened for you on your end.
Yes,
It was me. I thought it was just going to be my display. Sorry.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. So I think that there's greater transparency with a small team, right? You can kind of see their struggles, their successes, and what they deliver faster. And there's more transparency that way. What do you think, Jolly?
And one of the prime examples of that, Kumar, is what you mentioned earlier about the stand-up, right?
Yeah.
Let's say 15 people, and the stand-up takes 45 minutes or an hour. 90% of them are going to tune out after the first 5, right? So it's not like the transparency is not there. Right? I mean, if you dig deep, the transparency, if you look for it, the transparency might be there. But the fact that people don't have that much concentration, it just as an example of a stand-up, is indicative of why the transparency kind of goes away. Not because it is an explicit action that anybody took to hide things, but the fact that it gets lost in the detail. Right, and then that is an example of the stand-up. The same thing probably happens in sprint planning. I'm worried about what I do. I don't want to sit in this 3-hour sprint planning where they are discussing other people's work who I don't even really work with that closely, right? So that is where the things get lost. And the additional complexity of dependencies between all of these. It's almost like 2 different teams now. Right? There are so many people. There are dependencies between them, and which adds another level of complexity to the workings of the team. Makes it really, really tough.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. One of the teams that I'm any large team in my experience, it's almost like the teams themselves sort of morph into these little sub teams, almost like these little cliques, right? Where certain people tend to work together, certain people tend to work together, and they tune out. When these people are talking, it's not really relevant to them because they can't handle it. The number of communication channels that they have to keep track of. And so certainly smaller teams are more transparent because they all inherently know what they're doing. The stand-ups are efficient. It's transparent to each other. It's transparent to their stakeholders and so on. So much better. And then finally, I think, we didn't really ask Chris for his opinion. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just by the nature, right? There's less people, so you have more time to share. It's easier to keep track of. Most people only have, when you think about it, most people have a nucleus of about 3 or 4 really close people to them, right? In terms of outside their family. And that's kind of what we're talking about with a team. We're talking about a small group of people to go do the work. And the bigger the group, the harder it is to communicate, the harder it is to see what's going on, the harder it is to be transparent because you don't have as much time. Yeah, I agree. Transparency is definitely improved with a smaller team.
Yeah, so what are some tips that we might have for viewers? If they are part of a large team, Agile or not, what would you say is a path for them to get to smaller teams?
I'm going to punt that one to Jolly while I think.
Yeah, I mean, one way of looking at it is obviously there are different techniques that you can use to split teams itself. One of the popular things among advocates of smaller teams and communicative teams is that they self-form. Right? It's not like the leaders are telling them, "Hey, you and you work together and go form a team." So self-forming teams based on the skill sets that they need to make work to get work done might be a good option. Also, something to consider is that these teams, in Agile, kind of the principles say that we keep those teams together forever, right? And that is the most efficient thing. If this is indeed a bigger team that got into smaller groups to make sure that they work together really well, maybe they change that group based on what the work is, right? The work demands change over a period of time. It doesn't change every month, but over a year it might change, in which case allow them to self-form again so that they form the best groups possible that enable them to move work forward as fast as possible. So self-governance really helps. I think that's one of my big things lately. It's difficult to find management support, but I think it really works.
That's a really good point. Sorry, Kumar. That's a really good point there, Jolly, about self-organizing. I hadn't thought about it that way, but they may already be self-formed. They may already be working in their, you may call them cliques or whatever. Right, but there are probably already there. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, that's really what I see too. Is that they're kind of already forming that way. However, management, leadership, whatever, imposes this artificial team structure because they're all sort of working in the same area, right? Yeah. Where I've seen, to your point, the most productive and engaged teams are where you allow them, to your point, to determine who they work with, right, based on the work. There was one company I worked with for a while ago, and they took a sort of an open space Agile approach to their teams, right, where they laid the work out. They got all their people there, right, all of their developers and QAs and BAs and product owners and things like that, and they said, okay, figure out where you want to work. What do you want to work on? Who do you want to work with? And, by the end of the day, they had formed into small teams, 6 or so people. And we did give them some guidance, sort of some, constraints. Your team needs to be obviously self-organized. You need to have these types of skills, whatever skills you need to do the work. And you can't be over a certain size. Right. And they went and did it, and of course, it didn't take the whole day to do that. That self-organizing happened fairly quickly. But then it was part of the part of the day was team building and all that stuff. But it was a really great experience, to be able to get to smaller teams, that maintain a familial feel. Right. They get to know each other. They understand each other's motivations. They understand the work. And then kind of allowing them the opportunity to go work on another team for a while because they want to expand their skills, or they want to work with somebody else, right?
Right.
And that's what these people did in this company. Is they every quarter or so they wouldn't shuffle the whole deck, but they would give opportunities for people to go work somewhere else.
I think that by itself is an agile shot that we can do.
Yeah, it probably is. Yeah.
That's the ideal. I mean, people talk about doing that, but I have yet to see anybody really willing to go do that. And from a leadership standpoint, right? I mean, they may perceive it to be very risky. So,
yeah, it doesn't happen often. I mean, and I don't know, I've been consulting, coaching for a long time, and I only have two instances where this has happened. And interestingly, one was, a publicly traded company, fairly small. One was a government organization, of all things, right? And they had large teams, and they decided just to sort of, have this large group of people, and every quarter they would sort of do a release planning where this large group of people, about 50 people or so, they would self-organize into small pods to do the work. And the next quarter they would do it again, and the organization could be different, right? Because they would, again, organize around the work. So every quarter was a slightly different configuration of small pods, 3 to 5 people per pod that was doing the work. And this was a government agency. I was blown away at the time, and I haven't seen it really anywhere else.
Yeah, and there are many more benefits to it than the communication path and collaboration and all of that, right? I mean, there is a learning path, there is a co-ownership, so that's why I said, I mean, it's probably worth doing a shot by itself on small.
Yeah, and when you guys were talking, I was thinking maybe my formula is wrong. It seems wrong, and I found a reference on the web that this is the right formula: n times n minus 1 over 2. Yeah. Still, it's still exponential.
Yeah.
And so, with that, any closing thoughts before we end this short?
We are interested in knowing what you have out there, what you have tried, and please let us know in the comments. It will be interesting to see how it has worked out for you, but small or big, the pros and the cons of either one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, please do let us know. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks Chris. Thanks Jolly for this Agile Short, and we will see you all in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.